ahead and introduce yourselves, your name, like what you've been getting into around town, and yeah, a little bit about you before we get into some questions here.
Well, I'm Cami. I'm originally from Philadelphia, but lived in New York City for 5 years and moved back a year ago. I haven't really played shows recently, let alone do an improvisational piece with someone. But I've just been working on recording and different visual elements for my next release.
Oh yeah, we're excited to hear that.
Yeah, I guess I'll venture next. My name is Savan Depaul, aka Ishtar Senior. Both monikers I use it to make art. Coatesville born, Philly reared, Philly indebted, I guess. Been making music for going on 8 years, almost 8 years now. And yeah, this project was just, I was I guess I could say the main artist of the project. Kind of brought the whole, came with the vision and brought it together. So I'm very excited to talk about the project as a whole, and get to answer some questions and pick some brains.
Yeah, me too.
I'm Vera, and I guess my artist name is Gorpopap. I've been playing music for probably about half my life at least. But I didn't start doing electronic until I moved to Philly in 2016 and started my electronic project in about, I think it was 2017, first released in 2018. But yeah, I mean, so much of my music is definitely inspired by the city and just the scene and the people. I started when I moved here, so I think that says it all. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really been doing performances recently because COVID, but some online stuff. And this was awesome. I'm really glad Savan reached out to me. Or I guess I reached out to you because you posted on your story, but I'm glad it worked out. Because I love your music and we're definitely inspired to each other playing shows together pre-COVID and stuff. Yeah.
I don't know why. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Tim, or Sam. I'm an audio-visual journalist and children's art educator. And yeah, I mean, just being in Philly, hearing Philly, seeing Philly, kind of just informs everything, the way I live my life, the way I make my art. And yeah, I feel really lucky to be among such amazing artists and some really great organizers and artists as well. So yeah, thanks for having me.
I don't know if I might be more, but if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, can I ask a different question?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's about the performance that you all just did. So sonically, it was like super rich and cool and kind of, I don't know, very much all filling in the space, but it was also really textural and sometimes quiet and soft, just all around very dynamic. And I'm just really curious how you all are communicating to each other, like through these sounds, and how you're listening to each other while you're doing this semi-improvisational piece, and yeah, what that process looks like for each of you.
I guess I'll take the first crack at it. I'd probably say this kind of piece that we did is probably like 90% improv. I guess I would gauge it as that because we had our own little banks and stuff, and we're kind of familiar with each other's processes. For a few after linking our stuff together and doing a few sessions, but actually getting into the performance. So when we were up there playing, sometimes it's a verbal communication. So I'll be like, hey, Cami, do you want to take over drums? And she's like, cool, boom. Or if I might signal someone. I did that a couple times during the performance. Every once in a while, I'll do little just hand gestures or whatnot. I know for me, especially, that when more ambient passages came, and like when Vera and when Cami were, kind of taking the helm, I would kind of I'd be listening around and kind of looking, and then kind of peeling back my shit, and then kind of switching to more like live automation of certain sounds, and manipulating a lot of loops and stuff to create like a more like a glitch texture.
Well, I guess I was collecting a lot of textural sounds. I'm more attracted to like dark sounds, because I guess we're kind of in like a liminal space when it comes to events and raves. So I just kind of wanted my textural sounds to kind of match that. But so I guess I started with that, with the live performance, and then listened if anyone had beats. But we kind of switched back and forth with like who's taking the beats and who's taking the more textural or atmospheric elements.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the communication or just understanding what's going on is definitely just through listening. There's a lot of listening going on when you do improv. At least that's how I feel about it. It's like just intense listening, like what's going on, what's the vibe, what am I doing, keeping track of all the sounds that I'm making, keeping track of in my head sonically what the other two are doing, and just kind of trying to work with what they're doing and add on top of it and subtract, but yeah, I guess it's just like sometimes just peeling back and just sitting back and kind of saying like, okay, what's going on? How can I add to this? I think the soft parts were definitely interesting because we just kind of pulled back a lot and just kind of built it back up. I thought that was really interesting the way we were communicating there.
And I think a lot of what we used was stems from all of our songs, wasn't it? So it was like cool to see how our different stems like blend together and to make a new thing.
Some of the source material that I was working with on my PC some of it was just live or shit that I made. I just in general like loops, chunks of entire like instrumentals that I've made, certain stems or whatever, vocal snippets or like samples like edited and glitched to all hell. That's what I kind of weaved together. I put it in an effects chain. I had some vocals going too with a Merc pedal made by the indubitable and the indelible Madame Data Adiyama. Yeah, they made that plugin. It is my favorite plugin ever, and it is I threw that in there. My performance is a little bit of a tribute to them. So
That's so interesting that you all like each have your kind of like personal music making processes like a part of this like collective shared performance. I have another question if that's Joe. So you all, this is your first time collaborating as a trio, and you've performed solo, each of you, or in other collaborations. So I'm curious, like, when you're performing to an audience, and I know we kind of have an audience here, but a very small one, but when you're performing like at a rave or a really big party or a really small party even, in a small room, how do you feel that the audience influences your performance? Are you in your own headspace, or are you kind of like looking up often or thinking of them often and shaping your sound to what vibes they're giving off? Curious to hear what that's like for each of you and you.
oh yeah, I actually have a fair bit to say about this. So in addition, it also for me as a solo and collaborative performer, I tend to cover a lot of genres, and I often find that, especially most of the shows that I'm doing end up either being electronic shows or rap shows or which electronic rap or pop, like stuff that is very very visceral and like hits you at once, even if some of the content or like certain aspects of it, has heavier elements, it has a knock to it per se, So I often find that my performance and what I'm kind of doing with my body very much so is a response to sometimes a reaction, sometimes it is kind of molding with them in some sort of like mutualistic way. Sometimes again the antagonist. It really depends on the crowd. For example, like I've played shows where I'm doing like a rap stuff or whatever, and like people are digging it. Then I like switch out of nowhere to a future funk song, and then I have everyone. I'm like on the edge of the computer. The stuff's about to fall off the table, and like everyone's just jumping around you, just moshing, and I feed into that directly, and also I'll feed into like a crowd just like kind of just swaying with it or just like bouncing whenever I kind of end up like getting into that ebb and flow.
I think for me, I DJ'd before I started making my own dance music, and with that I found it was more feeding off the energy of the crowd, like DJing. But I honestly got bored with that because I wanted to actually play like my stuff. I find with more live performance, more in my own head, more in my own space, and occasionally, like the audience will distract me and I'll feed off of that energy, but usually, live performance for me is more of an internal, like, meditation thing that I like more, it's more planned for me, but, so that's why I thought it was interesting to do this, because it's performance, but it's not planned. So, this is new to me, but I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to feeling like I'm kind of just in my own space. Oftentimes when I'm performing, I just have a lot of things in front of me, and so I have to kind of focus on what's going on, but I try to also have moments in my sets where I don't have to do anything, and I'm just kind of singing over top of it, and so I can really just feel the energy of the crowd. And I mean, I think it definitely depends on like who's in the crowd, and like how I interact with them. Like when I have all my friends there, like that's a huge boost, everybody's dancing, having fun, versus like a bunch of strangers, I think that's also another way to interact. It's like I'm trying to prove myself in a way and carve out that space, especially if I know that like most of the people in the audience are not queer or something, and I feel almost at odds with that, trying to push against that in a way. Yeah.
Actually, an interesting little thing popped up when Vera and Cami were chatting. It's funny because I feel like very rarely this ever happens, but I feel like the couple times where I ever have been like, I'm performing or doing whatever live, and where I'm literally just focused on my gear and like what I play, they have been, which is funny, they have been like raves that I've DJ'd at, which is I think is very interesting, and I feel like all the performance kind of, like looking into the future, like what this performance kind of brought back to me was that like that to me was a little bit of a getting out of that, bursting out of that, because I couldn't, as there was it wouldn't work if I was in my head the entire time or just in my machines the entire time. I had to communicate with these two, and forcing myself out of that pattern and into a wider space across that period of time was kind of crucial to kind of just the longevity and the viability of the performance as a whole.
And Gary, you said something really interesting about carving out space during a performance, and I'm curious, like when you're performing in different venues, different types of venues, outdoors, indoors, wherever, more personal, more new or unfamiliar. What does carving out space kind of feel like, look like, or just entail for you, the community?
Well, I guess, trying to think about that. I guess kind of what it feels like is just like, I can tell when I feel on the outs. I mean, sometimes I can just look at it like especially in Philly, I feel like sometimes pre-COVID, I would often be thrown on weird bills where I was just like the lone electronic artist. And that alone is like making me carve out my own space among like weirder bands. You know, it would fit in a sense, but I'm definitely on my own in that way. So I think it's just kind of set. I could even just look at who I'm playing with, and their band camps and be like, okay, I gotta, you know, make my own space with that. And then on top of it, if I know that I get there and I can just kind of feel the vibe and be like, okay, I'm like the one trans person I can see here off the bat, you know, or like seeing other trans people or queer people in the audience and trying to connect with them and try to create that space. Through my lyrics, sometimes just like saying things louder than I normally would, you know, to kind of communicate or that kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as Vera said, I'm like, I need to jump in. No, but I had that like I guess earlier I said like occasionally sometimes responses to the crowd have been antagonistic. One of them was also being, you know, only electronic artist in the crowd, only rapper on the bill, only electronic artist in the bill, only black person on the bill, and add trans and queer to that. Sometimes carving out that space is directly confronting, like folks being a little more, in my experience, being aggressive with your performance, and occasionally like directly being like being during your set, between songs, talking shit or like doing whatever, because of shit you realize.
I guess I've been booked for a lot of things where I've been the only woman performer, a woman artist, especially like in the genres I do. Been booked for like noise stuff, where it's all like a bunch of bros. I guess so. I carved space out for myself there, but then I've also been booked for like, stuff with bands. And I just sort of carve out space for yourself. I don't know where I was going with that, but I kind of prefer being booked for stuff where I'm the only woman, because where it shouldn't really be a category where it's like woman like event or whatever. I feel like that's kind of alienating from everyone else, yeah.
So we had like a little Zoom meeting a few months ago where we chatted about like the theme of this event and everything. And something that you said, Savan, like during that meeting about queer space and like different stimuli that can kind of help form that space. And you talked a bit about like lighting and like glitter and makeup and stuff. And I'm really curious to hear like a little bit more about like, I don't know, the sort of physical feelings and objects in a space that might be conducive to creating or carving out a queer space.
Yeah, so I feel like there are a lot of not just qualities of, when talking about a space, a place within a position within space-time, you're kind of talking about that place. You also talk about the characteristics of that place, and the characteristics of that place include the people that are in there. And if you specifically want to be talking about building these queer spaces of joy and resistance, then you want to, let's look at what kind of aesthetic, what kind of, what are these people bringing? What are these people kind of bringing and experiencing in the space? What are they bringing to it? What are they doing in the space, wherever? And I feel like a lot of that comes down to like, some of it comes down to just the music itself, the amount of people, the proximity, how close people are to each other, food, drink, all that stuff. All that can impact that. And what people are wearing as well, especially as queer people, are wearing what the lighting is can affect mood as well. And I think all these things, they piece bit by bit into some ever shifting formula. It's never really one. It's a formula. It's never really one fixed equation.
Just thinking about lighting a little bit, to me, when I think of lighting, I think of visibility and kind of how much lighting, whether it's just the overhead lighting or a beautiful arrangement of colors and designs by a lighting artist, and that can really change the vibe, for lack of a better word, as a performer and an audience goer. If you feel hyper visible in a certain way, or if you kind of feel like I'm shrouded in kind of like a quiet blue light or something. And yeah, I don't know if anybody has any sort of thoughts or responses to that, just like the feeling of being vast in light and like how that can sort of change your headspace or feel space or anything.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I think so. So I feel like I'm so used to playing in basements and stuff, so I feel like when we started, and we had these lights on, like we have them on now, but before we were flicking them on and off, I was kind of like, when they would go off, I'd feel so much more comfortable in a way. Like, this is like my natural habitat, these nights and stuff, and I think what you said about like visibility, I feel like it's almost like, it feels like it's like when it made me think of like when you're playing in a basement, like in between sets, someone turns the light on, and you're like, oh crap, okay. It's like really bright down here, and you can see everybody's face and stuff, and it's like, it kind of just rips away the veil almost. I feel like it can really just set a mood, and it feels like you're in a completely different space than you are, I feel like, just talking about lighting and like being in a dark room and everything, it really like, feels like less eyes almost, like, because you can't really see as much, nobody else can see as much, it just feels almost like comforting.
I think it's very powerful, especially when it comes to parties and raves, because when the lights, like on the warehouse, come on in the morning, it completely kills the vibe. Because I think when it's dark, people are more comfortable gathering and kind of dancing and sweating together, not really existing in, kind of ignoring like space and time, like kind of like a dark party is more effective to just kind of forget about space and time and where everyone comes from. And just let your imagination go more.
I think if we're talking about lighting and visibility and how we want to utilize those things, I think two big words that pop in my mind are strategic and inclusive. So, like, starting with strategic, how you're, I guess, cycling through, because you can at some point like cycle through color and things like that. You can do very weird things with projectors. You can do very cool visual effects within rave spaces to, elicit certain moods and stuff like that. And I also think like having some certain lights off, certain lights on in spaces are strategic in a way as to kind of highlight or bring the best out of the rave experience. You might also want to do, to have some sort of strategic lighting or strategic invisibility in case of, any potential hazard of some sort. And then I would bring in the second word, inclusive, because and popped in my head because of just the experience that I had. You might have like these certain lights or whatever in the rave itself. If you have for example, if you have a rave in the forest and you have a lot of lights around the kind of like space people are dancing where the DJs are spinning, but you're in a forest and you don't have enough glow sticks to light the path and people get lost. I think we can think about lighting and visibility in a lot of different ways that are both concrete and abstract, and how we utilize them in order to kind of bring the best out of those experiences. And I think making sure that we look at light in a strategic way, as well as kind of the setting itself, the big shebang. We can there are other pieces that come that connect to it.
Henry, I kind of want to go back to something that you said a moment ago about how when you're kind of in dim or no light, kind of like time and space sort of fade away and your imagination can kind of flourish. And I mean, I guess I know it can be hard to elaborate on that, but I don't know if any of you kind of feel similarly in terms of like being able to, I don't know, enter a new sort of space or subspace when when things are not visible, when things are sort of disappearing or disappeared into darkness.
That just made me think of things like more abstractly of like everything disappearing, like nightlife disappearing. I feel like it's come back, but the same energy that was there before pre-COVID isn't really there. At least for me, like I tried to go out and stuff to events in 2021, and it just wasn't the same. Something about it just wasn't the same for me. And stuff may be still going on in New York and stuff. I just feel like, it's just not the same. But I think it can just be reborn into something new, I guess, in the future, soon.
Adapt with the climate.
Did you have any other? Oh, thank you all so much. This conversation leads me to think also how Philadelphia is a place in the Northeast that has a lot of, for right now in the winter, a lot of darkness, or it's cloudy, and it kind of is, cold, but it's also very bright in the summer as well, right? And like how that transfers to the music that you all make, because I feel like Philadelphia electronic musicians that I've seen, or versatile musicians that don't only do techno or electro or like mix in rap or trap or something else, I feel like it feels so real and genuine, even if I don't know the artist. And I don't know if that's something in relation to the place, right, where it can be, even on a cloudy day, so bright with the people in the city. And so I guess my question to you, and is like how you are imagining this queer future in Philadelphia through like the light you bring to the world.
It's a very good question.
Yeah, well, I think part of imagining it is just like that that desire for it. I think it's like, especially in COVID, like I haven't been going out because it just doesn't feel safe for me and the people I care about. Not to knock anyone who does, that's your choice, and I respect that. It's scary for me though, and it's part of that, like the long wait, is part of that desiring and building that, and I think it's almost giving people a chance to like rebuild in a way, like we said earlier, just something like just better and better. And I think in seeing like the future is just that desire. I mean, in this conversation, it's just bringing back lots of memories of going out and being around lots of friends and being with people maybe I don't even know, but just like feeling that connection through the music, through the space. It's definitely tugging a lot on memories and experiences and stuff. And I think you said through the light. I think this summer was definitely a change, a shift from last year. I would say it was like raves like every weekend, sometimes multiple a week, or like there was like you had to choose between the two, that were going on, which it almost felt like just like that stuck inside all winter, stuck inside all COVID, busting out. Everyone was like popping off, and I think that was really powerful, just like breath of fresh air almost in the seasons, with like the energy of the city.
I feel completely similarly, and just like in terms of what you said about like it kind of feeling like a big weight and things sort of being, I don't know, at least to me, I feel like, yeah, those things that I love so much that live in my memories are almost being withheld from me and from everybody, of course. And yeah, having that wonderful summer where, outdoor space was utilized and so many people were able to comfortably kind of come together again, even though, like you said, Cami, and I feel similarly with how sort of there's still an element from prior to the pandemic that isn't there, and I'm also sort of waiting for it, but I don't know when or if it'll come back, and so that kind of leads me to kind of wallow in a sad and in a kind of hopeful way, and just imagine what is coming next, what things are going to look like after this or during this.
I think we just have to be open-minded to how it can be reborn. I'm still kind of new to, even though I'm from here, I'm still kind of new to like the Philly electronic music scene and the music scene in general. I notice it's kind of very small groups of people kind of doing their own things with not much like of coming together, except for like a few raves I saw. It's like a lot of people coming together, but I think people need to like be more open-minded and not close themselves off in small groups and stuff, or get less cliquey. And because we all have the same struggle of this kind of together, even though it varies with different people, like what they're going through and stuff. Yeah, I think everyone should just kind of come together, and I hope that the original ethos of rave comes back, where it doesn't matter what background you come from. Even if you're LGBT or not, like I feel like everyone should kind of have this a lot in common now than they did before. So I think that could, having that in mind, it kind of gives me hope for a better future with music and art.
Yeah, if you could just cycle back the question, because I feel like it's a very, very important one. We're talking about kind of imagining kind of the futures of what this could be. I guess going through looking at the past few years, just kind of what it was before, and the pandemic hit, and kind of what it was last year. I do think a lot of me does really remain hopeful, because there's a lot of folks who are just kind of in these spaces who are yes, everyday folks who are just trying to survive out here and eke out the space of joy, especially queer folks, especially Black and brown folks, and when I feel like part of me that really remains hopeful, even despite like looking at these spaces and kind of, especially noticing like there's definitely some shit that like needs to be kind of challenged, and like in order to bring the best out of it, there's stuff that needs to be challenged or whatever, and like there's things that actively need to be resisted in order to, you know, for us to get to that spot where like, okay, now it's like we can get back to that, or, you know, original rave as an act of rebellion kind of thing. And in order for, I think there's so much that I can go into, and something I still want to explore so much more. But honestly, I see a lot of potential, and even with the weirdness and with all the clickiness and the whiteness and separate violence that is, you know, wanted to rear its head in Philadelphia, there's so much to fight for. There's so much to fight back for. So that's what I feel.
That's so beautiful that you know, the idea that, or knowing that we can sort of challenge and resist what is there, and not forgetting that. And you know, this also kind of reminds me of what you were saying about in your performance, when you're in a space that maybe isn't so welcoming in one way or another, being able to sort of confront that, like with your sound. Yeah, that's very inspiring.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. You have those links to the artists. Donate to them if you can. Thank you so much. Please check them out on the internet and see where their next shows are. And be safe out there. We appreciate